Hey all. Well, it's been a couple weeks since I did a Hall of Fame binder video, so well, it's about time. Actually, I was gone last week over 4th of July. Went away for a few days, and I took cards in case I had a few minutes just to stop and do something while I was there, but it just didn't work out. So anyway, I'm doing I'm doing Ozzie Smith today. I've been kind of itching to do Ozzie Smith for a little while for a couple of reasons. One, just because he's one of those players that I grew up, um, cheering on and collecting his cards and all those things. But also, there are some big Cardinals fans on here, and and especially one in particular. I was thinking of one really big Ozzie Smith fan, and that's John over at Nerding Out with Cards. Um, if you want to see Ozzie Smith cards and a great Ozzie Smith collection, I would suggest you go over to his. I'll actually link him in this. I hope he'll be excited about the Ozzie Smith cards I have to show. But if you want to see some incredible cards and more of his other cards, that's the place to go. Not here, but as you know, if you've watched any of these videos, this is more about my Hall of Fame binder and which cards I select to go into the binder. And so for Ozzie Smith he's a different kind of a player than a lot of the guys you see in the Hall of Fame. You either see pitchers who are your quote unquote defensive players, right? I mean, not quote unquote, all right? They're your defensive players, or you have your guys who are good on offense, so hits and home runs and stealing bases and those kinds of things. And actually, John was mentioning something about this in one of his videos a couple of months back that he had read or heard somebody that made a comment that if you took away Ozzie Smith's defensive abilities, then he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. And he said John said in that video that like sure if you take anyone's greatest asset away, and I was I sarcastically said, well, if you take Rickey Henderson, who was my player growing up, if you take Rickey Henderson's stolen bases away, uh, he still has over 3,000 hits. Like he's still going to make it into the Hall of Fame. But actually, I don't think that's a fair comparison. A more fair comparison would be that if you took Rickey Henderson's hits and stolen bases away, because and his walks, by the way, he's also second in walks, highest intentionally walked player in Major League Baseball history. But if you took all of his offensive stats away, because that's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about one specific statistic. We're talking about offensive stats versus defensive stats, and it's hard to quantify with a defensive player what that looks like. And I know there's some things you can talk about, assists and so forth, but what do you do with a person like Ozzie Smith? Really, maybe what you should do with Ozzie Smith, if you ever have any questions about his Hall of Fame, um, whether he's worthy of being in the Hall of Fame, is just go watch some highlight reels. I was listening, as I do, I was listening to some people that were talking about Ozzie Smith. So, and they were saying that if you made a highlight reel of Ozzie Smith's defensive plays, anything you left on the cutting room floor would belong on an All Stars highlight reel of defensive plays, because like he's done so many. And it's true, you can go watch and just watch them over and over again, these incredible plays. But let's talk about stats for just a second, because I think it's important. We might say that looking back, well, but the people of his era, 15-time All-Star, 15 times, 13-time Gold Glove winner, those are pretty incredible. Then if you want to talk about stats, the mathematicians have come up with WAR, wins above replacement, and no one has a higher defensive WAR than Ozzie Smith. His is 44 something. Second place is 39 something. So if you're only going to 44 of all the players in Major League Baseball history, and he is a full 10% higher than that, actually over 10%, right? Over 10% higher than the person in second place in defensive WAR. That's significant. He's not just a good defensive player. He's is he the greatest? He's certainly on the list. He's got to be top two or three, right? I mean, and you talk about the position in shortstop. People say, who's the greatest shortstop? And they'll talk about people like Jeter and Ripken. And I don't want to take anything away from those guys. But if you're only talking about the defensive side, I don't think many people argue against Ozzie Smith being um, probably the best. I mean, like, I think that's fair to say. Uh, he did struggle with hitting. That was one of the big kind of knocks against him. He struggled with hitting. He especially for his first couple of years. You know, he played for the Padres for his first couple of years. I have one card of him in a Padres uniform. I will show it. I don't think there's any point in really having that conversation. I think he belongs in a Cardinals uniform. And I know from just stuff I've heard him say that he would absolutely agree with that as well. But when he started out with the Padres, they tried to do something because he didn't have a great batting average. Actually, his highest batting average, I believe, over his career in a single season was like 303. He only did that once. Every time it was below 3, but it did get better as his career progressed. And one of the things he talks about is that he struggled with the Padres because he felt like they were trying to make him into a home run hitter. And I think it was in the second season that he went 0 for 23, or maybe it was even more than that. Just like all these at bats, he just never got on base. But of course, they keep starting him because he's so great on defense. You know, he's the wizard, right? He's the Wizard of Oz. Like this guy's incredible, and so they're going to keep him on even if he can't hit the ball. Which, by the way, should probably say something about his defensive prowess. But so you get this whole this guy who's struggling with hitting, and he said he just wanted to hit the ball. Like if he could just get on base, that was really what he wanted to do. And actually, it's interesting. One of the stats, and I didn't really realize he stole some bases, like, and not a few. He stole 580 bases in his career. Pretty high average attempt. I think it was certainly over 60%. Maybe even nearing 70% of the bases he attempted to steal, and that places him 22nd of all time. So that's nothing to sniff at. That's a pretty good stat there as well. So I don't know that I need to argue Ozzie Smith's worthiness to be in the Hall of Fame. It's just interesting that these kind of comments come up once in a while, and I think part of that is just because we talk so much about hits and home runs and all of those things that sometimes we forget that what somebody can do during half of the game, you know, half in the time that they're playing defense, how much of a difference just that can make. And so anyway, I'm going to quit rambling on. I'm going to show you some cards. As usual, I'll put some links in the description of the video, just kind of talk about my Hall of Fame project, what I'm working on, and just kind of what all this is about. So if you don't understand what's going on, you can go check those videos out. But I'll also post something to John over Nerding Out with Cards, my buddy over there. He's a great guy, great cards, so anyway, I'm done. Let me show you some cards. And then we'll go on from there. All right, so I have 9 of his Topps base cards. Begin with his 81. As I said, I'll show it. I have it. It's a nice looking card. I like you can see even right there, Ozzie led Padres with 28 stolen bases in 79. It's a good looking card, but he's just not in the right uniform. This one's a little better. It's his 83. Begin to see Ozzie Smith as he came to be known. 84. I believe this is the one I currently have in my binder. So great. That's the 84. 85. Just a great shot of him. One of the things that I found interesting, actually skipped right over 86 and 87. This goes to 88. Classic card. I love the 88s. This is the card I grew up with, the 88s. These were my first one. Anyway, one thing I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this is just because of the photography of the day. Here's the 90. Is all of his cards that are action shots are they're him batting, which wasn't his thing. This is a nice looking card. Signing an autograph for a fan. Actually, that's 93. I jumped the gun. Put that over here. I do have a couple more before that. I don't know if they just didn't take as many shots. Actually, the back of that card, it's kind of interesting. You know, the way that Topps had the league leaders in italics, and then ties. I had a little star or the diamond beside them. You can see why people would just look at a card, look at his stats, and these stats do not tell the story of Ozzie Smith. Here's maybe one with him stealing a base. It's a good looking card too. It's a great guy to hear in interviews. So, a lot of fun. Anyway, that's it from Ozzie Smith. If you think there's a card I should pick up that would be better than any of these, you can pick one of these. It would be the favorite. I'm sure Cardinals fans, Ozzie Smith fans have some opinions on that. I'd be happy to hear them. In the meantime, we'll end this video here, and we'll hope to see you again next time. Thanks a lot for watching, commenting, all that. Just really enjoy the interactions on here, and we'll talk to you later.